Hi everybody, it's Elaine from Tanglewood Nature Center. I am here to talk to you about Tanglewood a little bit and also about nature. So my favorite part of nature is bird watching. And I've realized from talking to friends and watching people's posts on Facebook that during this pandemic, people have turned to the birds. What I mean is, when you're sitting at your desk at home, looking out the window, you're supposed to be on the computer, but you notice something fly by, and you think, maybe I should start collecting these creatures closer to me. And how do you do that? Well, you feed the birds. So we've been feeding the birds for a really long time at Tanglewood, and it's always a challenge to know how to start and to know what to feed animals, the birds, and different kinds of birds you want to actually attract, like different seeds. So how do you know what to do? My first sort of piece of advice would be go to Wild Birds Unlimited in Horseheads, because they're great. They're supporters of Tanglewood, and they have all the equipment and seed that you would ever need, and that's where we get most of our things from too. A good way to start is with a really simple tube feeder. So the tube feeders are usually, they open somewhere from the top. So the tube feeders are easily opened from the top, like this, and then you just pour the seeds straight in, and depending on what kind of hopper it has, whether it's at the bottom or like our ones behind me, they have the little holes along the sides in alternate fashion, and then they have little perches for the birds. So the best thing to put in the tube feeders, and the thing that attracts the most species of birds, is black oil sunflower. It's fairly inexpensive in large quantities. You can buy bags of 40 to 50 pounds. That attracts lots of the backyard birds that you really probably would like to see, like chickadees, titmice, the cardinals, nuthatches, finches of all sorts, the goldfinches, the house finches, the purple finches, and tons of types of birds like black oil. And if you don't like the seed mess, you can get sunflower seed that is hulled. You also want to maybe have a ground feeder. So this feeder is one that you can put seed in just on this little shelf here, which usually has a lot of openings so the rain can go through, so the water doesn't get stuck here, and then your seed would get really moldy. And this type of feeder would attract birds that like to forage off the ground. So that would be your mourning doves, your juncos, some of the migrants that aren't going to be at your bird feeder all year, but things like thrashers. And so in this feeder you can have black oil, but a mix is usually kind of fun for this one. So a mix that has maybe safflower. Cardinals love safflower, by the way. And millet. Millet's kind of a junky kind of seed, but the ground feeders like it, and you will be attracting things like starlings and blackbirds, which are fine, and grackles with your millet, but that's all right. And then if you really like things like blue jays, nuts. They love peanuts. You can put peanuts out. This time of year I'm putting peanuts out for my blue jays just so I can watch them fly away and then stash peanuts in the ground or in trees. Winter is a great time to feed your birds. You don't have to feed them all year if you don't want to, but if you do want to feed the birds, winter's a prime time. That's because that's when the birds need it most. There's less stuff for them to forage for in the forest, less seeds, obviously no insects. Berries they can find, but it's not that easy, so you can help birds out by feeding them during the winter. I spent a lot of time this spring when we were home for the pandemic feeding my Baltimore Orioles. Their favorite food is grape jelly, so they would clean out my grape jelly a couple times a day, and during my breaks I would go and fill those up, and so we could watch them all day. And so if you're watching birds, you're also going to want to have a good pair of binoculars. So there's two main types of binoculars that if you're looking for binoculars that you will see. There's this type. These are called poroprisms, and this is the type that probably you remember, at least I do, from my childhood, the big old wonky ones that have this sort of shape that's angular. And these are actually really good for bird watchers. They're good for depth and for the field of view. And they have a pretty crisp a pretty crisp and clear look when you're looking through them. But the biggest thing about these poro prisms are they're always really heavy because of how the lenses have to be made, because the light takes a little jog when it goes through here and out, and so they have to be heavier, and they are really delicate. So if you drop them, which I tend to drop things especially when I'm out in the field, so they could get broken easily, and they can't make these very waterproof, also because of how the lenses are. So most birders will have binoculars that look like this, and this is called a roof prism binocular, and it's just a straight shot. The light goes straight through, and these are good because they usually are lighter, but they're also really hardy. So if you drop them, I still wouldn't recommend dropping your binoculars, but if you drop them, they tend to not break very easily, and they can be fully waterproof, which is fabulous if you're a bird watcher out there trying to watch birds in all seasons. They actually bring in more light, so they're brighter, but they might not be quite as crisp as the poro prism. And so you can get binoculars in any price point from $25 to thousands of dollars. I wouldn't recommend spending $25, but I also, unless you have a lot of extra cash laying around, wouldn't spend $2,000. I don't know, you can get a decent pair for maybe $50, but a really good working pair for maybe $150 or $200, so depending on how much you're into it. These are really old, and they're my favorite binoculars from grad school, and they are taped because the lens cap eyepieces go down when they're not duct taped, but as we all know, a little bit of duct tape can solve a lot of problems, so I still can use them. And then, so you got your bird feeders out, you got your binoculars to watch the birds, and then you're like, how do I know what birds I'm looking at? And sometimes, you can check things out on the internet, but it's better to have a bird book at home just to use as a reference. And there's so many different types of bird books that are out there. These two are two probably of the most popular. This is the Audubon Society Field Guide to North American Birds, and get a bird guide that is for, at the very least, North America, but it should be eastern birds, because that's where we live anyway. So get a bird guide that's around where you live. And then this Audubon has pictures. It's not my favorite because it's just one snapshot of a single bird that you can't necessarily equate to the birds you're seeing out in nature. So my favorite field guide, and I don't work for Peterson, but is the Peterson guide. And this is actually the Peterson First Guide, so this is actually a really good one for first young birders or new birders, because it doesn't have a ton of birds, doesn't have every possibility in the world, but it does have the main birds you're going to see in this area, and they're all drawings, and they have arrows that show, specific things you should be looking for when you're looking at your birds. So, the basics of bird watching is there's three sizes of birds that we compare a bird to as far as when you're trying to identify. So is it the size of a sparrow, which is, sort of smallish? Is it the size of a robin, which is a little bigger? Or is it the size of a crow, which is even bigger? Every bird is in a family group, and the family group for blue jays and crows and ravens is called the Corvids, which is astonishingly close to COVID. And at the beginning of all this, we decided that Corvids are much cooler than COVID. One of the most intelligent animals on Earth, especially the crows and ravens. They have so many skills that you wouldn't at first glance think they have. They have problem-solving skills. They can reason. They can barter. They can solve complex puzzles. They have funerals, actually. I don't know if they grieve, but they have funerals, gatherings for those who die. They can hold a grudge, and then they can teach other crows to hold a grudge, which is if you do something that they don't like as a human, they're going to remember you. But they also remember people who've done nice things for them. So if you feed the birds and the crows like what you're bringing, they're going to remember that you're somebody who's good, for what that's worth. I want to feed crows because I want them to like me.
My name is Jamie, and this is Hank, the red-tailed hawk. Now you might enjoy some time watching birds out in your backyard at the bird feeders. Birds also enjoy watching other birds. Small hawks like to watch bird feeders to eat other birds. And other birds like corvids and crows enjoy watching birds like red-tailed hawks. Evidence has shown that crows actually like to watch red-tailed hawks as well. They'll actually check to see how distended their crop is to see if they're about to hunt. And if they are, the crows will actually go after the red-tailed hawks. Crows have also been known to try to separate the red-tailed hawk parents from the nest so the crows could then go after their eggs. So Hank here came to us from Cornell. He had an injury to his right wing, and he's no longer able to fly like he would need to in nature to survive and hunt for his food. You can see his red tail, which is how they get their name, in the back here. And they hunt lots of different animals like rabbits and rodents, and they're found throughout the whole United States. You've probably seen these guys perching on the side of the road. So since Hank has that injury, he wouldn't be able to survive in the wild. So he'll be with us here at Tanglewood for the remainder of his life, and we'll take excellent care of him. So here to exercise Hank, we do some training with him, and he can fly about 25 feet to a perch where we offer him food, and then he can also fly back to us. So he doesn't do really long flights, but he'll do short flights, and he can do short vertical flights as well. And here at Tanglewood, since they're not moving around as much as they would in the wild, we also trim their talons and their beaks to make sure that they're at a healthy length. If you're wondering what a red-tailed hawk sounds like when it makes its call, you've probably actually heard these guys before. If you haven't heard them in the wild, you've definitely heard them in movies. Anytime you see an eagle, a hawk, a falcon in the movie, it's probably not truly that bird's noise. It's probably actually a red-tailed hawk. This is Sophie. She's a great horned owl, and she came to us all the way from Alaska. Sophie also had a wing injury. It's the wing that's over here, closest to my arm. Great horned owls are found throughout the whole United States, and they can be found in almost every habitat. They're very adaptable birds, and they like to eat a wide variety of prey, including rabbits, other small rodents like mice. Great horned owls will also eat other owls. Great horned owls get their name by the two tufts of feathers that are on top of their head, but those are not actually her ears. Her ears are actually at the base of those feathers, and great horned owls have asymmetrical ears, and that helps them pinpoint exactly where their food is when they're hunting at nighttime. Great horned owls can exert over 300 pounds of force per square inch. That's 100 psi more than the red-tailed hawk. These guys don't migrate in the wintertime. They actually stay in their home range and are able to hunt food even when there's lots of snow on the ground. They're able to pinpoint where their prey is with their accurate hearing. An adaptation that great horned owls have is they have eye tubes instead of eyeballs. That means they can't roll their eyes around in their head, and that's why they have to be able to move their head so far so they can see. So owls can't actually turn their heads all the way around, but they can turn their heads 270 degrees. See, I think she's only around 3 pounds, but she just gets really heavy the longer you hold her. So all birds have hollow bones, which makes them really light so they're able to fly. But unfortunately, that makes it worse when they actually break one of their bones. They don't always heal correctly, and that's why a lot of the birds end up coming to us here at Tanglewood. After they injure their wing, if it doesn't heal correctly, then they're no longer able to fly like they need to be in the wild and to survive. In the wild, these guys would hunt for their food and actually collect it in the nook of a tree, and they would let it freeze. And if there was a lack of food, or if they couldn't find food on certain days, they would actually take some of that food, sit on it, and thaw it so they would have a meal that day. When owls and other birds of prey eat their food, they tear it into pieces and eat those pieces whole. The birds are not able to digest the bones and the fur, so they'll actually cough those items back up into a pellet.
People have been spending a lot of time, watching birds, but people have also been spending a lot of time just going out in nature. And that is sort of also where Tanglewood comes in and why we're asking for your help. Because during this time, Tanglewood's doors have been closed and are closed at certain times, but that doesn't mean that the staff is at our desks taking a nap. We are actually all still working, all 7 of us. We're working really hard to continue our mission, and our mission of education and providing natural areas for people to enjoy. We are holding a pod 3 days a week for Elmira City School elementary kids for their parents to bring them. They're here all day, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and we help them with their virtual learning so their parents can work. We're still taking care of all of our animals. We still have the same menagerie that we've had, and they need food and water and cleaning every single day. We're writing grants. There's, you know, things have not stopped here, even though the world seems to have stopped. And we notice that more than ever, people are turning to Tanglewood to use our property for hiking, for a place that you can get away from everything. And that's where people run, because nature is our first home. And that's where most of us feel the most comfortable and calm and safe. And you go on a hike at Tanglewood and you can feel free, and you can get out of your own head, and you know, you can watch the birds and the deer and watch the leaves change and the seasons change. And we've made that possible because our trails have been open 365 days a year, dawn to dusk, throughout this entire pandemic, and we will continue to be open, but we need your help. So please, if you've got a little extra money, or just you know, want to help us out and help us get into the next year strong and ready for when all of this opens up again, you know, we'd really appreciate your donation. And for everybody who already has donated and who are our supporters, thank you. We love you all, and we can't wait to see you next year.